Hi, good evening. My name is Msia and you're tuning in to AWANI tonight. The federal court rejected Datuk Sri Najib Razak's application to review his conviction and sentence in the SRC international corruption case. The former Prime Minister will continue to serve his 12-year jail term, which was decided by another panel on August 23rd last year.
Najib had sought to review the federal court's decision that affirmed his conviction and sentence for misappropriating 42 million ringgit from SRC International, a former 1MDB subsidiary. He claimed that he was not given a fair trial, but the five-member bench, led by Chief Judge of Sabah and Sarawak, Dato' Abdul Rahman Sebli, ruled that there was no bias or breach of natural justice in the earlier court hearing. The former Pekan MP was first found guilty by the High Court on July 28, 2020 for abuse of power, money laundering and criminal breach of trust over SRC funds. He was sentenced to 12 years in jail and fined 210 million ringgit. The three-member Court of Appeal upheld the conviction and sentence on December 8, 2021, and this was further confirmed by the five-member bench led by Chief Justice Tun Tengku Maimun Tuan Mat last August.
Prime Minister Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim paid a courtesy call on China's President Xi Jinping, with the latter saying he's willing to work with Malaysia to improve joint construction of the Belt and Road Initiative. According to Xi, China is also willing to work with Malaysia to support the centrality of ASEAN. Earlier today, Anwar said Malaysia would not allow others to dictate how it should make decisions and plan its future direction.
Is an important neighbor, a major investment and trading nation. But United States, as a country, is a friendly nation to us. We are a small country. But nobody should dictate us.
The Prime Minister was responding to a question about current tensions between China and US during a public lecture at Tsinghua University in Beijing, China. He said Malaysia wished to build good relationships with all countries, such as China and the US, although both countries must understand that the dynamics of international diplomacy have changed.
Tanjung Bidara Assemblyman Datuk Sri Abdul Rauf Yusof was sworn in as Malacca's new Chief Minister. He replaces Datuk Sri Sulaiman Mat Ali, who resigned from the post on Wednesday. In a press conference after the swearing-in ceremony, Rauf said he would make an announcement on the new Executive Council lineup within 48 hours.
The swearing-in ceremony saw Rauf, who is Malacca UMNO's liaison chief, taking his oath of secrecy before State Governor Tun Muhammad Ali Rustam. Rauf is also the State Barisan Nasional Chief and was recently re-elected to the UMNO Supreme Council. He previously served as the Malacca State Assembly Speaker in May 2020 to November 2021 and was the State Executive Councillor for Industry, Investment and Entrepreneurial Development from November 2021.
School buses and public transport are not included in the government's planned targeted subsidy for diesel. Deputy Finance Minister Datuk Sri Ahmad Maslan said this is to avoid further hikes in fuel prices.
He said the implementation of the plan will begin when the subsidized diesel control system is completed in the second half of the year. On targeted subsidy for petrol, Ahmad said the matter would be expedited with a special committee already established to review the implementation method. One of the issues that will be looked at is the possibility of including those in T20 group who are faced with higher cost of living in Kuala Lumpur as compared to other states. According to Ahmad, if the targeted subsidy for fuel such as petrol, diesel and gas was implemented for only B40 and M40 groups, the government will be able to save 16 to 17 billion ringgit.
The amendment to the Penal Code to make stalking an offence was passed unanimously in the Dewan Rakyat on Wednesday after 2 rounds of debate. Louise Tan from Women's Aid Organisation highlights some of the concerns surrounding the current law related to acts of stalking and why the amendments are important.
The law currently states that stalking is defined as a repeated act of harassment. What this doesn't include is also acts of stalking that are continuous. So instead of an act that is repeated, it's just one long continuous act. So such as, for example, the perpetrator follows the target from their work to their school, and then to their home. So that's not a repeated act, but it is a continuous one. But even under the current definitions of the law, there is still quite a lot, there is still more ground for PDRM to act on compared to before. And we feel that the more important thing is that it's passed into law. And also the important thing is also so that now that stalking is codified as a crime, we can actually now start collecting data, and PDRM can start collecting data and statistics about the prevalence of stalking, and who is affected by it, what is the effectiveness of the law. And perhaps once we start with that, there will be more. Once we start with that, there will be more data and evidence to support these other amendments that we would like to include.
The bill aims to insert a new section 507A to provide for the offence of stalking, including acts considered an offence, and to provide a maximum penalty of 3 years jail or a fine or both. Lewis said this gives survivors the right to access protection under the law.
Survivors of stalking are not able to access protections under the law. The law has certain limitations. So, for instance, a survivor who has experienced multiple acts of stalking on different occasions may only be able to get the police to act on, let's say, one of them, one of the police reports that they make, unless the situation is severe enough, which we don't, which it's not good for the survivor to wait until that extent. Yeah. So with this law, not only does it empower the police to act on these cases of stalking, it also allows the survivors to access protection orders similar to what we have already under the Domestic Violence Act, which can prevent escalating harassment and retaliation from the perpetrator once an investigation paper is opened. And really importantly, so compared to the last time, so the important changes are that the law has the law that is tabled now has included a definition of stalking, including following and tracking a person, and it's also made the violation of protection orders into a seizable offence. So this means that if the protection order is violated, the perpetrator can be arrested for it.
We'll go for a quick break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Finland will officially join NATO within days after Turkey ratified its accession to the Western Defense Alliance. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said on Friday that all 30 NATO allies had ratified the accession protocol.
Turkey was the final NATO member to give Finland approval after delaying its bid to join the alliance for months. Ankara argued that the Nordic nation, along with neighbour Sweden, which applied to join NATO at the same time last May, supported terrorists. Any NATO expansion needs the support of all 30 members. Finland and Sweden asked to join NATO last year in response to the war in Ukraine. Finland shares a 1,340-kilometre border with Russia, something that will give the alliance a more significant foothold in the region. Turkey is still blocking the approval of Sweden joining NATO, with the government saying that Stockholm has so far failed to sufficiently crack down on groups seen by Ankara as terrorists.
Meanwhile, former U.S. President Donald Trump will be charged for paying hush money to an adult film star prior to the 2016 presidential election. This makes him the first former U.S. president to face criminal charges. A grand jury voted to indict him after investigating a $130 payout to Stormy Daniels in exchange for her silence about an alleged affair. The payment was legal, but was allegedly recorded as a business expense. Prosecutors says this amounts to Trump falsifying business records, which is a criminal offense in New York. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office confirmed the indictment on Thursday and said it reached out to Trump's attorney to arrange his surrender. Specific details of the case have not yet been released. Trump is expected to appear in court to face the charges and enter a plea in New York next Tuesday. The indictment of a former president is unprecedented in U.S. history, but Trump's supporters see it as politically motivated, and it may only harden their resolve to support him in the 2024 Republican primaries.
In the weeks leading up to the indictment, Trump, who was seeking to regain control of the Republican Party, had criticized against the investigation on social media and urged supporters to protest on his behalf. Following the indictment, a number of supporters gathered along the highway near Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida.
While I support Donald Trump and I support his run for presidency, I also want people to understand that this is an American issue. It rises above whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, whether you think Joe Biden is competent or you don't. Of course, you know I don't think he's competent.
He's falsely accused for the last 6 years. It's terrible. It's ruining our country. It's dividing our country. He was, the election was stolen from him in 2020. I totally believe that.
Trump, who has denied any wrongdoing, has repeatedly attacked the investigation and has called the indictment political persecution.
Many Republicans believe that this is a political witch hunt. This is all part of the weaponization of the Department of Justice and prosecutors throughout the country. And this whole investigation is illegitimate. And I fully expect those talking points and rallying around Trump to continue. Legally speaking, this case won't affect the 2024 presidential race. If Trump wins, of course, no sitting president can be prosecuted, so the case will have to stop. But even if Trump is convicted before the election, these charges don't disqualify him from holding public office.
The U.S. Constitution only lists 3 qualifications for presidency. He or she must be at least 35 years old, be a natural-born citizen, and have lived in the U.S. for at least 14 years.
In other news, Britain struck a deal to join the 11-country Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, CPTPP, as it looks to deepen ties and trade links in the region. The British High Commissioner to Malaysia, Charles Hay, when speaking to Astro AWANI, said the move is just the beginning of trade concessions and improvements of the two nations. Hay said increased trade and removal of barriers such as import tariff on Malaysian palm oil could further promote growth of both nations. He added that talent movement, culture, education and mobility will also see a significant upside between both Malaysians and British citizens. Britain has been looking to build global trade ties following its departure from the European Union in 2020. It is now the first European country to join the trade bloc and the first new member to do so since the CPTPP was created. Existing CPTPP members are Japan, Australia, Brunei, Canada, Chile, Malaysia, Mexico, New Zealand, Peru, Singapore and Vietnam. Britain said the deal would boost the economy by £1.8 billion each year in the long run, a figure that could rise as more countries join the pact. CPTPP is one of the largest free trade areas in the world, with a population of over 500 million people and a total GDP of 60 trillion ringgit, which will further increase once the UK joins. While many cases of bullying in schools are reported or seen online, many more go unreported as students continue to suffer in silence. What does it take to end bullying in schools? Tonight on It's About Youth, we explore ways to make schools a safer place. That's all for AWANI tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Msia, and we'll see you next week.